All right, guys, we already had the official kickoff to the NFL preseason last week with the NFL Hall of Fame game, but I really find it's a stretch to call that actual football. But in honor of the rest of the preseason kicking off this weekend, what better way to celebrate that than with a mock draft? And with this mock draft doing today, it's going to have a fun little twist that I think is going to really challenge a moniker that I've been championing all offseason for your fantasy football drafts. So stick around to find out what that is. As always, like the video, comment down below if you think I whiffed on any picks or what picks you liked for my mock draft. Subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and I will go ahead and cue that intro. Welcome back into Twin Takes Fantasy Football for yet another 2023 redraft mock draft. And as I alluded to in the intro, this one's going to have a little bit of a twist. I know something that's becoming more and more popular with fantasy football is that you're going to be adding wide receiver positions. So as some of you eagle-eye viewers have already noticed, instead of our normal 2 running back and 2 wide receiver positions, we now have 3 wide receivers that we have to start week in and week out, in addition to potentially throwing a wide receiver in our flex as well. Obviously, I've been championing all offseason to go after wide receivers, especially in the first few rounds of the draft. Go ahead, get those elite wide receivers, because the tiered drop off after the first 3 rounds of wide receivers, you can still find, in my opinion, value at tight end, running back, and quarterback further on down the draft. But I think that drop off after kind of that DK Metcalf tier, DK Metcalf, T Higgins after that, it just completely dries up. And especially if you are in these leagues with 3 starting wide receivers, you really need to target that talent early and often in drafts. So let's see how this turns out. With that little caveat thrown in, this is going to be a full PPR 12-team league, 1 quarterback. And I found out I no longer have to ask Siri for a random position. If you just click start draft without picking one, Sleeper will automatically just randomly assign you a spot. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do and kick off this draft. Okay, so I'm there at the turn at the 111 position, which I'm actually not too upset about. This particular year in 2023, I think there's a ton of good talent when it comes to the wide receiver position at this turn. So right now we're looking at going with CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Devontae Adams. All 3 of those guys are in my quote-unquote tier 2 of my wide receiver rankings that we've done 2 weeks ago on this channel. So I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb. He is my highest ranked of the wide receivers I have left on the board, and see hopefully either AJ Brown or Devontae Adams will get back around to me. Unfortunately, AJ Brown was taken, but Devontae Adams is still there. Despite his age, being 30, on the wrong side of 30, that is, and with a lot of concerns that Jimmy Garoppolo is posing to the Raiders offense coming in and replacing Derek Carr, which is, it's not a huge downgrade, but it still is a marginal downgrade. Obviously, you don't have the college connection that Devontae and Derek Carr had. It didn't prove to be overwhelmingly effective last year and for fantasy football, but it is generally better to have a wide receiver playing with the quarterback that he likes. I don't think Devontae Adams and Jimmy Garoppolo have any sort of relationship whatsoever, so it'll be interesting to see how that develops as the course season turns on. But I just think this is a case of a guy that's way too talented to pass up on. He's been a top 3 wide receiver. Before last year, he was a top 3 wide receiver 3 years in a row. He still is one of the most purest route runners in the NFL. Still a guy that before last season was considered one of, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL. I think he's just too talented to pass on no matter who's throwing him the football. So yeah, I'm pretty happy, especially when we have to start 3 wide receivers week in and week out. Compared to a Jonathan Taylor, a Derrick Henry, a Josh Jacobs, there's obviously a lot of concerns around both Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs, even if they're going to take the field at this point. Derrick Henry, I still think he's a great running back. He was my running back 4 in my current rankings. So I still think there's just so much value at the running back position later on down the field, or later on down the board, that I have to go with Devontae Adams here. And if you're not out on Devontae Adams, or if you're out on Devontae Adams' age and the quarterback situation, you still have tons of great options, guys that are in that tier 2/tier 2.5. Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Seriously, if you're in 9, 10, 11, 12, if you're really targeting wide receivers in the first 2 rounds, I really don't think there's any combination in which you can go wrong. So we come back around, and as we see, we like to hopefully get DK Metcalf here towards the end of the 3rd round, but you're going to see a lot of those wide receivers go off the board pretty quickly, especially when you have to start 3 of those wide receivers. So I don't get that option to pick up a DK Metcalf here, but I'm okay with that. And I think some of the guys in the middle rounds, the talent isn't there, but we've already talked about some of the rookies, some of the second-year breakout players that I'm super high on down the board. So I think right here you have to just target value. Guys like Lamar Jackson, especially how we've seen how dominant those high-end quarterbacks can be. I think there's definitely a drop-off between the top 6 quarterbacks in this class, and we've seen guys like Lamar Jackson. I mean, we have seen Lamar Jackson in the past have the ability to absolutely win you a week on his own, especially with the way that the running facet of a quarterback has been incorporated in the offense. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, for example. I mean, the quarterback position and the top end quarterback position, the guy that are these dual threats, are becoming more and more important for fantasy football as that aspect of the game develops. So taking Lamar Jackson here, I don't want to risk it. I could try to grab someone here and see what happens with both Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson trying to fall to me. But I think Joe Burrow, excellent quarterback, but for fantasy, Lamar Jackson, his rushing upside, being in the Todd Monken offense, just signing a massive contract with all the receiving talent they have, I think, in my personal opinion, he's going to be better than Joe Burrow. So I'm going to go ahead and take Lamar Jackson. I'm not going to leave it up to chance, and I'll go ahead and reach a little bit and take him here in the 3rd round. Right here, we go on to the 4th round. And again, there's a lot of receiving talent that I want later on down the board. I mean, not that I'm drafting against anyone here, so we'll kind of let my hand out. Marquise Brown, a guy that I'm targeting maybe in the 6th round. Jahan Dotson and Zay Flowers. Jahan Dotson I'm actually okay with as my wide receiver 3. So if I don't take another wide receiver until Jahan Dotson, I am perfectly okay with that. So maybe with Jahmyr Gibbs already off the board, with uncertainty of Miles Sanders actually getting back to me, he's not going to get back to me. So I think I do have to take a running back in this spot. So 2 guys that I really like are either Aaron Jones or Miles Sanders. I personally think Miles Sanders is just going to be ranked a little bit higher. They're both with quote-unquote rookie quarterbacks, despite Jordan Love not being a rookie. It's still his first year in the NFL as a starting quarterback, so a lot of unknowns surrounding the quarterback in both situations. I'm leaning towards Miles Sanders, for the age. He's younger, has a lot less wear in the tires, and I could certainly see people make an argument for Aaron Jones in this decision. He's been a top 10 running back for the past 4 years straight, regardless of what the offense of Green Bay has given him, regardless of Aaron Rodgers' play. He always seems to do it all the time. But, he is getting a little bit older. He's hitting that 28 age cliff for the running back position. I'm not sure how much longer I want to keep gambling on Aaron Jones. He was a guy that was a sell high for me this past offseason. So I'm going to stick with my rankings. I know it's a massive reach on Miles Sanders, but I know he's not getting back to me in the 5th round, so I'm going to go ahead and take Miles Sanders here. And, just with, I think, the volume that Miles Sanders will get, there's really not much challenging him outside of Chuba Hubbard. I don't think Chuba Hubbard's going to be that involved in the running game. I think he's also going to be used a lot in the pass-catching game. We've gone over this just ad nauseum on this channel, with his history of being an efficient pass catcher. For the Eagles in his first few years before Jalen Hurts took over, with the actual conversation that we saw released between Miles Sanders and Frank Reich and ownership of the Panthers saying he wants to be used in the pass catching game. I think he's an absolute steal at his current ADP for the running back position. Unfortunately, Dallas Goedert goes at the 509. That's quite early. I don't know if the sleeper ADP is being influenced by the mock drafts that I do. I haven't seen him go this early in actual drafts, but that's very upsetting that I don't get my guy at this point. Without Dallas Goedert on the field, I'm going to be punting tight end all the way down to the very bottom of the board, and I'm okay with that. So now it's time to turn my attention, towards some of these more, towards another running back here, and then also towards another wide receiver. So, I'm going to stick to my tier rankings, and I'm going to go with James Conner. I know there's going to be people who advocate for Cam Akers or DeAndre Swift. Again, with DeAndre Swift, I think I mentioned this once more on the channel. You have Rashad Penny, you have Kenneth Gainwell. I mean, there's the whole running back room with the Eagles right now is 5 running backs deep, and I'm assuming that Trey Sermon at some point will be put on the practice squad. But Kenneth Gainwell is a guy that was heavily utilized in Super Bowl last year. A guy that I think Nick Sirianni and the rest of the coaching staff is very much a fan of in the Eagles locker room. He has a great he's one guy that there has tenure with the team, and we saw him be effective in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. I believe DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny will bring a lot of spark to this offense, but it's going to be a true running back by committee. And again, the whole injury aspect of both Penny and DeAndre Swift does worry me a lot. So right now, the best value at the running back position for me is James Conner. Again, he was running back 6 from week 10 onwards, And, and that was even with a good chunk of that time without Kyler Murray. So I think James Conner, especially with DeAndre Hopkins being moved on from, is going to be a huge focal point of this offense, and just a screaming value here in the 5th round. We could go Drake London, but the second-year wide receiver that I'm more a fan of is Jahan Dotson. If Marquise Brown wasn't here, I definitely would go after Jahan Dotson. I'm going to see if Jahan will fall to me at the 7-11 here, but right now, Marquise Brown, I know it's dangerous taking 2 Cardinals, but I think outside of James Conner and Marquise Brown, there's absolutely nothing on this Arizona team. They're going to be in a position where they have an absolutely horrific defense. They're going to have to put up points. They're going to be going against a very weak NFC team, except when they go against very weak NFC division, except when they go up against the San Francisco 49ers. So someone's going to have points. I know it's dangerous to have 2 assets on one of the worst teams projected in the NFL, but I think the talent of Marquise Brown and the talent of James Conner will rise to the top. I think just the absolute sheer volume, even if the offense in and of itself is not productive, the absolute sheer volume that both Brown and Conner will see will have them achieve some sort of fantasy relevance this year. So it's a dangerous move, but these are guys that individually I'm very high on, and even when push comes to shove, I do need a wide receiver. I do need a 3rd wide receiver. And those are guys that, frankly, irrespective of their position on the team, same thing as I said with Devontae Adams, they're too talented to fail, and I'm going to believe in the talent rather than situation. And I know there's an argument made for situations, and, it's a bad situation. When we look at Jonathan Taylor, why his draft capital is falling outside of the off-field issues, with Anthony Richardson coming in, with the offensive line concerns from last year. And I want to factor that in, but at the same point, you still have talented players, and you can't pass on them too much. Right here, we do see Jahan Dotson fall to us. I'm going to play a risky game here because I have 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs. And I think there are other wide receivers that I can target here if Jahan Dotson happens to go. I'm going to take David Montgomery. I think there's a massive tier break after he falls off. He's actually a top 20 guy for me, a guy that I think can slot into that Jamal Williams role for the Detroit Lions. Last year, he had the 2nd highest contract given in free agency to the running back position, and he's a guy that's been shown to be an absolute workhorse. We know Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the main, on the depth chart, probably the running back 1. However, Dan Campbell and the rest of the team up in Detroit have been very adamant about him being used as a weapon out of the backfield, not so much a runner in between the tackles. He'll be used in the screen game, the pass game, especially as Jameson Williams serves that 6-game suspension. And when it comes to the goal line, given the Jahmyr Gibbs size concerns, you'll be knowing that David Montgomery will be getting all of that touchdown upside, and the backup running back in Detroit proved pretty relevant for fantasy last year. So I'll go ahead and get David Montgomery. And we lucked out. We lucked out quite a bit letting Jahan Dotson fall. Team 12 did need a quarterback, so I could, that makes sense looking at their team needs. Maybe it would not as big as a risk as I initially thought, but with Jahan Dotson, again, this is a guy that I just really don't want to overthink things with. He was insanely productive as a rookie, had 7 touchdowns, tied Chris Olave, I believe, for the most touchdowns of a rookie wide receiver. Unfortunately, he did miss 5 games with a hamstring injury, but, if he doesn't miss those games, I truly believe that Jahan Dotson and his production profile that he put up while he was healthy would have translated to being one of the most productive rookie wide receivers up there in the name of a Garrett Wilson and in the name of a Chris Olave. He would have been in that conversation for Rookie of the Year. Everything's just looking up. Okay, Sam Howell, not a great quarterback, but who was throwing him the ball last year? Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke? Yeah, that was pretty rough as well. Sam Howell is not that much of a downgrade. Not that much of a downgrade from what we saw last year. Also, you're bringing Eric Bieniemy, the guy who facilitated the most passing offense in total yards over the past 3 years. I get that was with Patrick Mahomes, but is there anyone that I want running my offense for a passing offense? It's going to be Eric Bieniemy, and I guarantee you he'll be able to use the absolute sheer talent of Jahan Dotson really, really effectively well in this Commanders offense. And Jahan Dotson here, frankly, if David Montgomery had been picked before the 7-11, which I do think is a pretty high probability, Jahan Dotson in the 7-11 is a guy that I'm going after all day, every day. Just truly talented, a 2nd-year wide receiver that was really overshadowed just given the hype around Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, but I truly believe has a very similar production profile to what those 2 guys represent. Unfortunately, Zay Flowers goes at the 905. With Rashad Bateman's injury, with the hype around the Ravens, I understand why his ADP has been rising, and I really can't blame anyone for being that high on him. He is, frankly, if we look at JSN, Quentin Johnston, as far as guys that are going to be productive this year, I think Zay Flowers might match Jordan Addison with immediate production in their respective offenses, but Jordan Addison's going almost a full round ahead of Zay Flowers. Frankly, right now, out of those main 4 rookies in JSN, Addison, Quentin Johnston, and Zay Flowers, Zay is the only one that's really palatable to me at his ADP. JSN is going in the 7th round, however, and this is not to say that I think Zay Flowers is better than JSN. Clearly, JSN is the better wide receiver prospect all around than Zay Flowers, but with the offense that he's in Seattle, it's going to be a very run-heavy offense, and you have Kenneth Walker as well as Zach Charbonnet sharing the backfield there. You also have incumbents like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett that are going to command a large target share as well. So I just don't think the immediate production from JSN is going to be similar to what Zay Flowers is. There's not going to be too much competition. Again, injury concerns with Bateman. Odell Beckham has the injury concerns as well as being on the older end of his career. I just think Zay Flowers is a guy that's going to come in and be a target monster from day one, maybe the second leading target share behind Mark Andrews. And as far as media production for this year, Zay Flowers is that guy. So right here in the 9th round, I have 4 wide receivers. I have 3 running backs. I have my quarterback. So, do I want to stack up depth of the wide receiver? Probably because it's a 3 wide receiver league. Do I need another running back? Yeah, but I can grab guys. A guy that I'm starting to like a lot down the board is Raheem Mostert. There's a lot of uncertainty around the Dolphins backfield, and getting a guy that could be, a top 20 running back and attached to a dynamic offense like the Miami Dolphins. As a steal, basically with the second to last or last pick of this draft. I'm kind of souring a little bit on Samaje Perine with as we see Javonte Williams become more and more likely to play preseason as well as start week 1 for the NFL. So, it's just not going to be the volume that we anticipated in the offseason. Khalil Herbert, again, is going to be having to share a lot of snaps with Roschon Johnson. I think Roschon comes in and is an immediate effective running back, as well as the running back 1 on the Bears depth chart, which is going to be Justin Fields. So we'll have to look around here. Jameson Williams, a guy that, maybe you take a shot on, maybe you take a chance on, but right now a guy that I think is a screaming value given the most recent reports coming out of the Broncos camp. We saw Tim Patrick get carted off with a leg injury, won't be playing this season. They cut KJ Hamler after some issues with heart palpitations. I know Jerry Jeudy is the guy that everyone's high on, but Courtland Sutton is a guy that, he's done it before. He's had really good receiving seasons. He's really not that old. People want to say that he's past his prime. He's really not. I think he is a guy that could be sneaky productive at this ADP. So I'll be taking Courtland Sutton here in the 9th round, turning around in the 10th round. I did cut out kicker and defense just for the sake of time in this mock draft. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to take a quarterback here. We're going to take a running tight end because we still haven't taken our tight end. We're going to punt that position, and then we're going to take probably Raheem Mostert with our last pick of the draft. So is there any tight ends that I really want to target? I mean, if we look at the tight end position, it's really wide open. I've highlighted some tight ends that are really far down the board that, if you're punting the position, you don't have to worry about too far. I mean, I'm going to take Dalton Kincaid here just to have that potential upside as a rookie, coming in being the second highest target share behind Stephon Diggs on the Buffalo Bills offense. But there are guys that are going undrafted based off current ADP that I'm super happy with. 2 guys are Irv Smith and Hayden Hurst. Irv Smith just attached to a very dynamic Bengals offense. And we've seen, the offense do very good things for the tight end position in previous years. I mean, it single-handedly got CJ Uzomah a massive contract from the New York Jets. And Hayden Hurst, while he has been a bust compared to being the 16th overall pick by the Ravens about 5 years ago, he still has been productive. And obviously, we like to follow the narrative of finding those tight ends that are attached to rookie quarterbacks because generally you see when the play breaks down, when the play calling and the offenses are schemed to be more simple for these rookie quarterbacks, that tight end generally becomes their security blanket. It's been how I've been able to hit on a lot of my tight end predictions in the past years, talking about guys like Mark Andrews, like Evan Ingram last year, that sort of thing. So Hayden Hurst with Bryce Young, a guy that is incredibly accurate, is going to be attacking the short and intermediate areas of the field. It's going to be an absolute feast for Hayden Hurst, especially with the state of that wide receiver core down there in Carolina. So a guy that you can pull off waivers even after this draft is done. So just as an onset, just know that I'm picking up Irv Smith and Hayden Hurst as options at the tight end position. If I'm punting, I'm picking them up as options probably after the draft is over, because I'm playing. If my mindset here is, I'm probably getting an IR spot, and I could put Kyler Murray on the IR. He's going to be on the physically unable to perform list to start training camp. He will not play throughout preseason. I don't think he starts week 1. I think he probably comes back around game 6, game 8, maybe halfway through the season. So there's going to be still a lot of play left with Kyler Murray. And we've seen Lamar Jackson have injury issues in the past, and having a guy who's been a perennial top 5 quarterback because of his insane rushing upside, taking him here in the 11th round, even after an ACL injury, that's not bad at all. Plus, I can throw him on my IR spot. I get another spot, and I'm going to probably pick up Irv Smith or Hayden Hurst after this draft is over. But like I said, we only have 2. We have 3 running backs so far. Probably want to pick up a third one. We're taking a guy in Raheem Mostert who could potentially be the running back 1 for the Miami Dolphins. Again, a very explosive offense under, one of those offensive-minded gurus in Mike McDaniels. So, with the last pick of the draft, I know a lot of people, I do have one more pick. I don't know how I flubbed that one. So, let's just see what's left for us to take. Not too much that I'm really enthralled with here. Again, whoever I'm taking here is probably going to get cut. So just to make it easier and not have to go through, analysis of 1,000 different positions, I'll just take Irv Smith here. Maybe someone else has been watching my channel and wants to snag him off the waivers in front of me. So I'll go ahead and take Irv Smith with the last pick of my draft to make sure he does make it onto my team. So coming up and finishing the point about Raheem Mostert, again, a guy that had top 12 weeks last year. Again, a guy that was, actively brought in by this current coaching regime of Mike McDaniels, a guy that really fits the dynamic of this offense. One of the fastest running backs in the NFL. I believe he has 4.2 speed, runs at like 22 miles an hour, close to what Tyreek Hill runs at or has been clocked at running in the NFL. And when you're building an offense based all around speed, Raheem Mostert in the 12th round, a guy that could potentially come in, especially if Jeff Wilson gets injured. We haven't seen him stay on the field for a full season. I think that value in the 12th round is too good to pass up. So if you look at my roster, I start off with Lamar Jackson. My running backs are Miles Sanders and James Conner, which even in non-3 wide receiver sets or non-3 wide receiver leagues, it's looking more and more common. Like, this is my running back duo, and I just think for the value that they provide in the middle rounds, it cannot be beat, and allows me to take some of this top tier wide receiver talent. And going up against CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, and Marquise Brown, I know a lot of people aren't going to be very happy when they see that lined up across from them on a weekly basis. Also with, I think, the upside of Jahan Dotson, coming into the flex, coming in on bye weeks, I think it really will be a breakout season. We want to target some of those year 2 wide receivers. Drake London's draft capital is already being projected. His ADP in the 6th round or so is, it's projection that he will take that next step. But Jahan Dotson is that one guy that I think, people aren't factoring in a second-year breakout into his ADP just yet. You see Olave, Wilson, I don't have to talk about them. They're being taken in the 2nd and 3rd round. Their breakout is already being factored into their ADP. Treylon Burks, his breakout is honestly semi being factored into his ADP even after they signed DeAndre Hopkins. Jahan Dotson, I think, is the one guy that a lot of the fantasy community, especially in home leagues, are sleeping on. So that 4-headed monster at wide receiver, I'm really happy with. Tight end, I'm not really that worried if I don't get one of those top tier guys. Again, just punting the position, not going to waste, a 6th to 10th round pick when I think there's still value at wide receiver and running back to gobble up. And I think just streaming the position, whether it's Dalton Kincaid, an Irv Smith, a Hayden Hurst on a week-to-week basis, I think, it's fine, especially given the talent I have at my other positions. David Montgomery, Jamal Williams 2.0, extremely, extremely happy with that. So, even with a league that's starting 3 wide receivers, I think there's tons of wide receiver talent. I still think it is a viable strategy to target wide receivers early and often throughout your draft. I know some people's mindset is, we'll just kill them with quantity, because if someone's really targeting wide receivers, well, then you're going to get guys like Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb and some of the top tier running back talent falling down the board. Maybe some of the quarterbacks fall down the board as people reach a little bit on these wide receivers. as I go through this draft process and as I go through some of these mocks with these 3 wide receiver leagues, I still don't feel that the value you're getting from those, onesie positions of the tight end, the quarterback, or even the running back, taking some of the more value that falls as people reach on running back or wide receivers. I don't think that value can be made up with wide receivers in the middle tier rounds. I still think it is a league in which you need to attack wide receiver even more aggressively in the first or second round. So, all right, guys, sorry about that hard cut right there. I got off a little bit on a tangent of evaluating positional value, especially when you have leagues that deviate from the standard of 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. It went pretty off the rails, so I'm going to cut that, shorten it down to, listen, if you have a league that deviates from that 2 running back and 2 wide receiver, leagues like that have 3 wide receiver, whatever you think the positional value of that third wide receiver position it is, I promise you it'll be more. Whatever you think that increased running wide receiver value is, just double it, because in my own personal league, we had a 3 wide receiver league, and then even in the startup draft, it was a dynasty one, by the way. Even in the startup, people knew it was 3 wide receiver league, and there was long-standing ramifications where people kept feeling that they could not start enough wide receivers, that they just never had enough wide receivers. So, when you see an extra position, just whatever its impact is, just double it in your mind and really, really attack it. But that being said, I hope you enjoyed this mock draft. There should be a few more before the actual season starts, and we'll also wrap up here soon with our rankings for tight ends and quarterbacks next week. We'll also be covering some of the news and notes throughout preseason as it progresses. So enjoy the preseason this weekend. Hopefully not too many injuries. Fingers crossed. We always hate to see that as a fantasy community. But until then, guys, take care.